Stay sane out there. I'll see you soon.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Indisputable, where the truth is indisputable. And the truth is, Dr. Richie is not with us today, so you're stuck with me, Jessica Burbank, and Jackson White. Both of us are Rebel HQ contributors for TYT, so check out Rebel HQ on TYT, watch some videos. Jackson, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Things could always be worse, but things could always be better. So let's continue to work for a better future. But like you said, people gonna have to deal with us today, but I think we'll be all right. So let's go ahead.
We'll take good care of you. I think the people are in good hands.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, let's get into some of this stuff. So the right-wing group, America First, has been running advertisements warning people that the left is being racist against white people. Let's watch this.
When did racism against white people become okay? Joe Biden put white people last in line for COVID relief funds. Kamala Harris said disaster aid should go to non-white citizens first. Liberal politicians block access to medicine based on skin color. Progressive corporations, airlines, universities all openly discriminate against white Americans. Racism is always wrong. The left's anti-white bigotry must stop. We are all entitled to equal treatment under law. America First Legal paid for this ad.
Isn't that something? So that's an ad running on television in Georgia. Here's what the person who shared the advertisement online said. It was airing as part of a buy in Georgia where a high-profile Senate and gubernatorial campaign is being waged. The spot, the person said, was running in the Augusta, Savannah, Albany, Columbus, and Macon markets, as well as in Tallahassee, Florida, just south of the Georgia border. Fact-checking the claims in the ad from Politico, the claim that Harris said non-white citizens should be prioritized for disaster relief has been mischaracterized. According to fact checks, another fact check found the comment from Biden about COVID relief ignored the entirety of his statement, as he was referring to how minority-owned businesses have been disproportionately impacted by the economic crisis. Other efforts by America First. Earlier this year, America First Legal filed a lawsuit in the state of New York against the Department of Health guideline for COVID-19 treatment that stated non-white race or Hispanic Latino ethnicity should be considered a risk factor, as long-standing systemic health and social inequities have contributed to an increased risk of severe illness and death from COVID-19. They also filed FOIA lawsuits requesting federal agency plans to comply with a Biden order to advance racial justice. Citing this same Biden administration order, the group has sent political mailers that state Joe Biden and left-wing officials are engaged in a widespread racial discrimination against white and Asian Americans, even though it's against the law. Among other moves, America First filed a class action lawsuit challenging the president's COVID relief bills program to provide aid to socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. So this should come to no surprise. But the group was launched by longtime Trump supporter Stephen Miller, someone who worked with Donald Trump, who has a history of advocating for hardline immigration and socially conservative policies. As a Senate aide, he would cite white nationalist websites in his emails with conservative-leaning outlets as a top policy advisor for Trump. Miller was also one of the most influential advocates for stricter immigration policies, including separating children from their parents on the southern border and a restriction on travel from some Muslim majority countries. So it should come to no surprise that this is a character behind this ad. But I really want to unpack the racism against white people, because as a white person, I understand that many white people don't understand this. But someone's reaction to oppression and someone's reaction to systemic racism is not racism itself. It is a reaction to that. And I want to bring in Jackson here. What are your thoughts on this nonsense?
Well, my initial thoughts is that that's actually the first picture, the one that we initially showed of Stephen Miller, where he was smiling and he didn't have on because he always has on like a permanent F-boy face, like he's trying to look sexy, like he's squinting his face and stuff like that. But my thoughts on this is that it's so stupid that you only can take it as parody. Unfortunately, millions of Americans really feel this way. And these are the people that are being driven to the polls more and more. And they can't hide their own racism, because the fact that they even made this commercial and then, America first, okay, white people first, and then on downward down the scale of colored pigmentations down to, and then black people last, you know what I'm saying? So again, unfortunately, these people actually believe this. They think that, and the stupid thing is these people still got vaccinations. They still had access to everything that they wanted to get. But I guess that their feeling is that other people had access to it too. So things weren't as timely as they should have been or whatever. So it's stupid. But again, unfortunately, you got to take it with a little bit of seriousness, because these people vote.
Yeah, I think about how we can reach people and break down this kind of thinking, because people are susceptible to fear mongering when they're not doing well, right? If they're not paying their bills, they don't have food on the table, they can't keep the lights on, they can't pay rent, you're in a place of survival mode. And if someone's saying hey, we found someone for you to be mad at, sometimes that can sound pretty good. Then if you had all of your needs met, you might be a little bit more critical of the stories you're being told. And I think how we break this down is, hey, systemic racism is actually a problem for everybody, because we're just camping out at a racist city council member's house who is spreading anti-black racism, trying to disenfranchise black voters. And there weren't a ton of white people in the community who were coming out to the protest, but they were supportive and did want Kevin DeLeon to get out. But I think about what it takes to communicate that we need collective liberation and everyone has a stake in this. And I really think about police budgets taking up such a large proportion of cities' entire budgets, all of the public funds. In Los Angeles, it's about $3.2 billion. We just covered a story in Uvalde where it's about 40% of the city's budget. And when that much money is going to things like policing, we know communities of color are over-policed, we know black people are disproportionately impacted by policing, and that's all intentional and that's all by design, and funding the police is a part of a racist system. But those $3.2 billion could be going to your kids' schools. If you're a white person living in Los Angeles, you also have a stake in getting these racist people out who are funding the police. You have a material stake in that. And so I think to break this down, we have to say, hey, we're not gonna be able to set things right and actually have public goods delivered by our government unless we come together. But ads like this really make it hard to communicate that message when people only think about things from a place of fear and racial division.
Well, and to close off with what you said is so much of what we see in the fear is just stem from propaganda alone. The #1 news show in the country being Tucker Carlson, where night after night he's stoking fear about people coming across the border, people joining the Democratic Party, literally pushing the Great Replacement theory and attacking people who say that it's a conspiracy theory and that it's not totally real. So a lot of their fear and a lot of their the prejudice that they think they're experiencing is all imaginary. And a good point on that as well in terms of policing budgets, like out here in Jersey, like, it's a small state, so a lot of the townships are right next to each other. One of the more wealthy ones is called Montclair. There's really no crime going on there. There's some nice shopping going on, but really nice houses. It's a nice area. And you can see like literal like police tanks riding around, the entire brand new SWAT vehicles, and how much of the budget goes towards just protecting property, and how much of that money could be going towards better things. So, white people in this country as a whole are in no type of racial danger, but the ones that think they are, it's because they watch shows like Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, absolutely. This idea that like you are losing your power and privilege in society, and that somehow should feel like oppression, rather than, us all being equal is actually something good, and that would be a much better society for everybody to live in. Unfortunately, that's not the state of America. And you mentioned conspiracy theories and how this kind of extremism spreads. There are some interesting sources for where a lot of this is coming from, how these candidates are getting power. The midterms are coming up, and there's an unlikely reason why some of these candidates who are election deniers and white supremacists have enjoyed some success in their campaigns. According to a Washington Post analysis, Democrats have spent nearly $19 million across 8 states in primaries this year, amplifying far-right Republican candidates who have questioned or denied the validity of the 2020 election, interfering in GOP contests to elevate rivals they see as easier to defeat in November, even as those candidates have promoted false or baseless claims. The practice by some campaigns and outside groups this year has divided Democrats, with some in party complaining, or some in the party complaining that such tactics are risky and could ultimately result in the election of candidates who pose serious threats to democracy. The approach often involves TV ads suggesting that a far-right GOP candidate is too conservative for a state or district, and drawing attention to the candidate's hardline views on abortion, guns, and former President Donald Trump, messages that resonate with conservative primary voters. In other cases, Democrats have run ads attacking GOP candidates seen as tougher to defeat in general elections in ways that could erode support for them in Republican primaries. Total Democratic spending rises to roughly 53 million when a 9th state, Illinois, is added. There, Democratic Governors Association, the DGA, and the campaign of Governor J.B. Pritzker spent a combined 34.5 million successfully elevating a GOP candidate who has said it was appalling that party leaders in Illinois wanted Trump to concede the 2020 election. $34.5 million to get a GOP candidate that is an election denier to run against Pritzker. That is insane. The Democrats gave this strategy one more try in New Hampshire. There were 2 races in September, and their efforts ended up helping these 2 men. So we've got Don Bolduc and Bob Burns on the right, Bolduc's on the left. So you can see them. GOP Senate candidate Bolduc concurred with Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was rigged, and signed a letter along with other retired military leaders claiming without evidence that the FBI and Supreme Court ignored election irregularities. Burns was an otherwise poorly funded GOP House candidate who acknowledges that Biden won, but has claimed that a ton of other unspecified elections were stolen in 2020. Now, Now, here's the approximate amount of Democratic money spent in GOP primaries. Just look at this chart. It's insane. You can see that about 6 of these candidates won, and you can see the millions of dollars that were spent promoting these candidates that are spreading messages of conspiracy theories and lies, shedding doubt on the democratic process, and spreading far-right messages on the airwaves. These are millions of dollars spent by Democrats boosting these candidates. So adjusting for these New Hampshire updates for these 2 races, Bolduc and Burns, they're moving on to the November 8th general election, along with 4 other far-right candidates, making the total 6. So Democrats directly interfered with at least 13 primaries here. And just think about, what if they spent that money promoting Democratic candidates and spreading a Democratic message about what they do, how they won't cut Social Security like conservative candidates would? This money may have been much better spent elsewhere. 13 primaries, so 6 gubernatorial races, 2 Senate contests, and 5 House campaigns. More reporting from the Washington Post on this. In one instance, where Democrats helped fund a Nevada organization promoting a right-wing gubernatorial candidate, the organization's leader, a Republican, told the Post he spent excess funds on down-ballot races Democrats hadn't intended to finance, including a Secretary of State primary in which an election-denying candidate prevailed. Critics complain these investments undercut the party's vow to be guardians of democracy. Worse yet, they say in a difficult political climate for Democrats, they fear it might lead to electing the very candidates they perceive to present the biggest threats to the country. The way I see this is Democrats fight progressives extremely hard in primaries to try and make sure that establishment candidates win, and then they go off and fund right-wing candidates. They're much more afraid of progressives coming to power than literal fascists winning in America. This is very scary. So when we see the results on November 8th, keep in mind the roots of these results. And if these candidates win, we know that the Democratic Party itself had a hand in this. So Jackson, I want to bring you in here. This is some crazy reporting.
And there's one thing to be said about strategy, but the fact is that this is not a new approach. This is something that the Democrats have done many times in many elections over the course of years. And the results haven't been such that when we do this, we win 100% of the time. This is in more of the bigger consequential elections. We saw this with Donald Trump. People didn't particularly take his campaign seriously all the way through to the finish. Many things that should have been done weren't done. And as you pointed out, regardless, spending money on your own is always a better tactic. And if the Democrats, we know the issue why they don't is corruption, but if they were a party that delivered and then, took to the bullhorn what it is that they did for the people more often, then they wouldn't need to play these types of tricks. Because at the end of the day, this really is a trick. You're trying to indirectly, it's passive aggression, which I really don't like from people anyway. So this really is a passive aggressive tactic that it doesn't guarantee any type of real results. And this is why we need to continue to push for better progressives to get in office, which I personally believe that we have a very good opportunity to do, not just in the next handful of elections, but just generally in the political time that we're moving into. I have faith that a lot of strong leaders will continue to rise up. And but yeah, it's really a shame to see Democrats wasting this amount of money on a tactic that they've seen doesn't work many times over.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd think that maybe when we got to the point where the candidates running in these primaries were pushing conspiracy theories and that our elections are not valid, that maybe then they would say, okay, let's not promote these messages or these candidates, but they will literally stop at nothing. And I think at the heart of this is that both parties' leadership really want centrist mainstream neoliberalism, and oftentimes it feels like they're on the same team. And this is one of those situations where it's like clearly one party is pushing white Christian nationalism and election denial. They hate democracy. They want to live in a white Christian nationalist state, and they're saying this directly. And still the Democratic Party is promoting them. I just think it's scary. We live in a time where instead of doing something to help people and delivering public goods, they still play the political game. Any last thoughts on this, Jackson?
Other than we got to take it into our own hands, not really.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very important last thought. And with that, we've got to go to break. Stick and stay. We'll see you on the other side.
I'm wearing one of our pieces of merchandise. So the funny thing about the Dragon Squad, and that's what our viewers call themselves. That's the name of the group, but every individual chooses their own name. You might have Cincinnati Dragon. You might have Harry Potter Dragon. We have a Grandma Sunshine Dragon is one of those that I remember. These are people that like to have an element of themselves, their lives, what's significant to them reflected as a part of the community. But the concept of the Dragon Squad is just something I threw away as a joke. I was mocking the Proud Boys, these like right-wing groups that come up with a name for themselves that they think is cool, but it's actually really lame. And I thought, off the top of my head, I can come up with something that's still kind of lame, but much cooler. And so I threw out Dragon Squad, and I just moved on with my life. But everybody liked it, and so they kept it going, and so we've embraced it. And I think again, this was during the period of the pandemic. I think it was sort of nice to have a renewed sense of community, a feeling that you're a part of something when everything seems so chaotic. And as a result of that, we've got independent artists online streaming, making beautiful digital art of dragons. We've got, we've released a number of pieces of merchandise that people love sending us photos of them. And then by the way, for me personally, people send me, like you can probably see in the background, like a knitted dragon someone sent me. There's a dragon book they sent me, dragon board games they send me. People have done like custom ironworks, making dragon bottle openers. Like the fans are super invested in diamond art and things like that. And so it's great that they send this stuff. Sometime we're gonna have to set up a wall of all of it. But yeah, it's definitely brought the community a lot closer together. The fact that we were no longer in this big studio, I felt a lot more personally attached to people. It felt very immediate. And I know that I personally needed the connection.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course. So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you, okay? Now you could also choose if you wanna do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change. And if you wanna know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
All right, we are back on Indisputable, and we're just talking about the midterms. Exciting news coming up. Will Democrats keep power or will Republicans take back control? We will see on November 8th. You can join Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, Senator Nina Turner, Dr. Rashad Ritchie, John Iadarola, Jared Jackson, Michael Shore, and me Plenty of good people to tune into. Tuesday, November 8th on election night. Coverage starts at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. And you can watch on TYT.com/live, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And you can also tune in on Samsung TV Plus, Roku, Zumo, Pluto TV, TCL, Fubo TV, and Local Now. Plenty of options. We will see you on election night, breaking down the results of those elections. Now, let's go to some viewer comments. Let's see what you all are saying. We've got Lynn, who says, for all that's wrong with that anti-white ad, I am impressed Kamala's name was pronounced correctly. Kamala. I struggle with that too, because I always read it and I'm never speaking it. Kamala.
I always say Herschel instead of Herschel. It just comes out.
Yeah, I've been saying DeSantis for the longest time. And then in his ad recently, he said DeSantis. And I was like, is he saying his own name wrong or are we wrong?
He's just making it more fancy, that's all.
DeSantis, like Ohio State.
Yep.
DeSantis. All right, we've got Anahita who said, knowing how the Democratic Party wasted money spreading hateful, harmful messages by supporting far-right candidates, make the constant demands for donations even more infuriating. Imagine if they spent that money in literally any other way. Just throwing it out of a helicopter over a neighborhood in need would be a better use of it, in my opinion. Ooh, we have Eric Killmonger who said, Jackson and Jessica are my favorite new combo. They need their own show. Thank you, Eric.
Oh yeah. We make some good content together for sure. Definitely.
We concur. And we've got more of that for you now. You know what's coming next, everybody. I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free. Back off. I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Jesus! How long do I have to go to these places? I've been to every one of them. Do I have to be handcuffed?
What happened?
My husband lied. He's hurt me.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So listen,
he's the one who's been to jail, and why am I handcuffed?
So listen, right now you're handcuffed for your safety and their safety and our safety, okay? So let's just talk to me first. Talk to me first, okay?
Jesus, I bow my head before you, and I ask
I'm gonna check your blood pressure real quick, okay?
Okay, take it.
Thank you.
I've been checked from one end to the other. See if I'm pregnant at 66 years old.
It's possible, man.
Well, I know it is. He's tried to do it in my ear and my face and put it all over me. How would you like to have poured all over you?
Stop. There's a child right there.
Well, maybe that child needs to hear about it.
Maybe not. Maybe the child doesn't need to hear about the bodily fluids all over you, ma'am. I don't know. And I just can't help but notice how polite the cops are to her. If that was anybody else, it would have been they're resisting, and it probably would have ended violently. But when it's a white woman with her hair in the Karen fashion and a pearl necklace on, that's not the exact response we get from police officers who wear cowboy hats to work, now is it? Jackson, I want to bring you in here. What are your thoughts on this woman?
Well, it's not just that she's a white woman, but she also seems like somewhat of a regular, you know what I'm saying? Because she said, every time I'm in here, they put the handcuffs on me. Why this time? And they were talking to her like, oh, here we go again. It's Kathy, like they know what to expect. And then how do you know that the children don't need to hear about that? You know, I mean, education is good. If they live in a red state, then they're not getting any type of sexual education in school. So that may be the best. That may be the best they have. So, you know. Who knows?
Advocate for sex education gets arrested.
Absolutely. Yeah. Legalized prostitution.
Yeah, and she says, you know, they've checked me from one end to the other. It seems like a mental health situation. We could avoid situations like this if we simply had universal health care and provided everybody with mental health care, which is a part of health care. Imagine how much less money we would have to spend on policing in these situations. And we actually had a response team for mental health issues. And we had preventative care, so it didn't get to situations like this time and again. Just a thought, just some food for thought. We could avoid the Karen interactions if we had universal health care. Everybody's got a stake in that.
Well, that's if you think that we all deserve health care. But if you have a mindset that, you know, people who aren't exactly like how you think they should be, we should take a punitive approach to everything, then you just don't think that way. So
I think
unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I would say the response to that is just, you gotta tell people, we all work hard. Corporations we know are exploiting our labor and making a ton of money off of it. They're not being taxed. You've already done the work to have nice things. And if we simply had a profits tax and we reallocated that money, or people paid their working dollars into a public healthcare system instead of it directly going to corporations for profit and people had higher wages, it would be a different situation. But everybody works very hard in this country and the money's there, it's just not being allocated correctly. Now, we have a double dose today. Let's get into it.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
You're still free! Back off!
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life. I will film you back.
Yeah, go ahead, film it back. Cause you're the one that was trespassing.
Ma'am.
Cool, you got your phone, call 911. So they know that it's her.
Call 911, sure. Do it, this is,
yeah.
You have a motion sensor that's designed to be painful. You have an object that's designed to be painful that goes off repeatedly when people walk by. It's really, oh my God, please.
Then move.
I live next door.
Okay, and you're the one trespassing on our stuff.
When your car
going over here. Okay, but is it bothering you right now? Is it bothering you right now?
It is, indeed.
Then go inside. Or you want to wait for the cops?
I'll wait for the
cops. We'll wait for the cops.
I'll wait for the cops. Okay.
If it bothers you, just walk away. Just close your eyes. It's a bright light. It's not hurting anybody. And there's more from this. The Karen and this person argue about property lines and they call the police. Let's watch that.
I think that this is trespassing, but you keep your car on the sidewalk in front of your garage.
This is our garage. This is our property. This is our property. You cannot tell us where to park. Yes, it is. This is our property. This right here is our property.
This is not your property.
Right here is our property.
That is the public sidewalk.
This is our garage. Are you crazy?
So put your car in the garage, ma'am.
Are you crazy right now? I'm not. You are crazy. You are crazy.
I did spend time trying to look up, information about whether or not this is legal, and I couldn't in Googling find anything specific to the idea of a motion activating noise sensor. But I did find something saying that if they're making the public space unusable.
Karens, they keep the police in business. Is it a crime for your light to be touching the sidewalk? So the neighbor gives a little bit of backstory about this, and this poster provides some backstory as well. Let's watch.
Basically, if you've been watching the stories, there's been a lady that's been trespassing in the yard, taping up the rat sensors. So today while we were doing the trash, she came up to us and was just acting like she was begging and pleading for us to remove the sensors. So we called the cops because the last time we called the cops, they said that she's trespassing and she could be arrested. Literally, the cops came in like 2 seconds. While my sister was making the call, the first thing they asked was she's white, and that's the fastest that they even appeared. So the cops came, they didn't do anything. They pretty much said, you can file a claim for harassment. Just gonna keep documenting.
File a claim for harassment. So they showed up, they saw what was going on, and they were like, maybe you can file a claim if she comes back. It's all on video. We saw what happened. Clearly harassment. They were just trying to take the trash out at night. And what she says is the police came the fastest as soon as they found out she was white. We know that the police do not respond quickly to problems of crimes of black folks, if they are the victims, people of color who are the victims, working class people, poor people who are the victims of crimes, because they exist to serve and protect white supremacy and property. It's very simple. There are infinite stories that demonstrate this, but we have to keep covering it because that's very clearly not observed by everybody. Jackson, what are your thoughts on the big light scandal?
Well, she just has way too much time on her hands. She's quite bored because who has time for police unless absolutely necessary? She's like, I'll sit around, I'll chill till they get here. and she was totally confident in the whole thing. So unfortunately, sometimes we have to live next to very bored neighbors. And then the poor dog, he just wanted to go on a walk. He just wanted to have his time, and he was barking the whole. That was distracted me the whole time. But unless she causes like property damage or puts her hands on them or something like that, then they'll probably be able to do something more. But unfortunately, they may have to just continue to deal with her.
Yeah. Jackson, you're forgetting that the light hurt her.
Yes, it did. It was designed for pain. Yes, exactly.
Designed to hurt the neighbor's eyeballs. A crime, terrible crime in America. We've got to crack down. We've got to be more tough on crime. All right, let's go to break. We'll see you on the other side.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now, these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member. Go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join, and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey. Hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitsing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here. This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? It was a white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it, though.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
Got you. Welcome back to Indisputable. And right after this is Unbossed with Senator Nina Turner, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. You can tune into that, youtube.com/unbossedTYT. Make sure you subscribe so you get those videos at the times you cannot tune in. And the watch list with J.R. Jackson every Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Math is very difficult. And then every Monday, I'll be joining JR on Watch List and Senator Nina Turner on Unbossed, but you can watch those shows live daily. JR's is youtube.com/watchlisttYT. Now let's see what you all are saying, because you all are always saying good stuff. Lynn says, and the Oscar goes to handcuffed Karen. Yes. Travel Nurse Dragon says, I guess she has to wear pearls with a t-shirt so they're handy when she needs to clutch them. That's beautiful, well said. LaRon Harrison says she needs to puff on a little something to bring her Karenicity levels down. Agreed. On top of universal health care, just universal puff on something is a policy I support. TA2 Gypsy says, so disgusted with Karens in all caps. Another person says, I object to her teaching children about pearl necklaces. Jackson, can you get behind that? Is that all right? Pearl necklaces?
Oh, I'm totally with that. That's cool with me. I'm with a whole lot of stuff we can't say on this program right now, so we be good. We're gonna have to say that for bonus episodes on the main show.
Amazing. Oh, someone says doggos love everyone, even Karens. May their trust and love never be misplaced.
We don't deserve dogs, man. We really don't. That's one of the biggest blessings of life.
Especially Karens, man.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's get into some stuff that the Don is doing. We are going to get into the details of what Donald Trump is up to, suing Attorney General Letitia James. Let's get into this lawsuit. This is ridiculous. So the lawsuit claims that James's war of intimidation and harassment on President Trump, his family, his business interests, and his associates is longstanding and continuing. James has repeatedly abused her position to pursue an unapologetic crusade against President Trump with the stated goal of destroying him personally, financially, and politically. Reporting from Raw Story. In a 41-page filing before the Florida State Circuit Court in Palm Beach County, the former president sought to shield his Florida State revocable trust from any investigation by the state of New York. The filing argued any investigation would violate his right to privacy and violate his rights as a grantor and beneficiary of Donald Donald J. Trump revocable trust. The lawsuit went on to accuse the Attorney General of ethical misconduct by seeking restitution in her $250 million lawsuit against the Trump Organization. In truth, James knows that no restitution is owed, but seeks only attention for herself and retribution against Donald Trump. That's a quote from Trump lawyer Timothy W. Weber. And the lawsuit would not apply to the Trump Organization. Meanwhile, per Politico, Donald Trump's attorneys saw a direct appeal to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas because they know he shares a bed with someone that is their friend and political ally as their best hope of derailing Joe Biden's win in the 2020 presidential election, according to emails newly disclosed to congressional investigators. Trump attorney Keith Cheesebro, that's his real last name, wrote in a December 31st, 2020 email to Trump's legal team, quote, "We want to frame things so that Thomas could be the one to issue some sort of stay or other circuit justice opinion saying Georgia is in legitimate doubt." Cheesebro contended Thomas would be our only chance to get a favorable judicial opinion by January 6th, which might hold up the Georgia count in Congress. So they are up to a lot of nonsense, accusing the Attorney General of using her power to actually seek some justice and the many terrible things. There's a whole slew of them that Donald Trump has done in the state of New York. They're trying to get in the way of that and use their legal connections to help them out. Now they are trying to not only do that, but also save Donald Trump's behind when it comes to the January 6th involvement. And now there's new evidence that suggests Clarence Thomas was directly involved, which is something a lot of us suspected. More on Donald Trump and his shenanigans. Attorney John Eastman replied, "I think I agree with this, suggesting that a favorable move by Thomas or other justices would kick the Georgia legislature into gear to help overturn the election. These messages obtained by Politico were part of 8 emails Eastman sought to withhold from the January 6th committee," quote from Cheney and others at Politico, "but that a judge ordered be overturned anyway, describing them as evidence of likely crimes committed by Eastman and Trump. They were transmitted to the select committee by Eastman's attorneys last week, but remained largely under wraps until early Wednesday morning. Thomas is the justice assigned to handle emergency matters arriving out of Georgia and would have been the one to receive any urgent appeal of Trump's lawsuit to the Supreme Court, a fact that seemed to be part of the Trump's legal team's calculus." So now, over in Mar-a-Lago, the DOJ is mulling over an immunity deal for Trump ally Kash Patel. This is his photo, to secure his testimony about the allegedly declassified documents. So they've got their hands full, the Trump legal team. Patel was one of Trump's appointed representatives with the National Archives, so he could offer material insight into the nature of the documents and how Trump regarded the records. Reporting from The Guardian. The status of the documents has emerged as relevant to the criminal investigation surrounding Trump's mishandling of national security materials, since it could strengthen a potential case that the former president was in violation of state secrecy laws. Trump and advisors such as Patel have claimed repeatedly since the FBI search in August that the documents bearing classification markings found at the property had in fact been declassified before the former president departed the White House. The claims that the documents were declassified have not been supported by evidence, however, and Trump's lawyers have not repeated the assertions in a related legal dispute before a judge or in court filings where they could face penalties for lying. Justice Department officials are examining whether to allow federal prosecutors to seek an order from the chief US District Court judge in Washington, granting Patel limited use immunity to compel his testimony on the declassification issue and other matters, the sources said. So this is a move that we're pretty used to from the Trump campaign, where they tell Donald Trump one thing is happening. This happened with the 2020 election. They tell him all of these stories about fraud and how the election was stolen. But then when they get to a court of law, none of that evidence comes to light because it turns out they were just being yes men and lying. And when it's their butt on the line with the law, they tend to rescind all of those statements that they had said earlier. Jackson, what do you make of what the former president's up to these days?
Well, first, I cannot get cheese, bro, out of my mind. At first, he's like, what? But I just had to get that out. But I think the reality more and more as the weeks drag on is that Trump really is in no position to win a general election against a goldfish, against anybody. It's true that he's a celebrity within the Republican Party, but the reality is that the desire to defeat Democrats will become more and more pressing as their way isn't had. You can look at how they treat Donald Trump when he suggested that they get a vaccine, or how a lot of them are. Elon has been at the head of Twitter for but a day or two, and they already like, what? You're not going to let him back on? So these people are very fickle that we're dealing with, and the Republicans really are not in a great position. They're just not. The reversal of Roe v. Wade is extremely unpopular. Hundreds of them just voted against gay marriage. Hundreds of them just voted against access to contraception. And the reality is that progressives and just newer generations are getting more effective at just shutting their nonsense down. And so, Donald Trump is what? This is the 4,000th case of him acting like, oh, I'm totally innocent. There's nothing to see here. It's like, okay, so again, the Republican Party needs somebody else. So I'm really not too worried about him becoming president again, to tell you the truth. Could be wrong.
Sounds like he's got his hands full.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and unfortunately, while he's busy and he's got his hands full with all of these lawsuits and all this nonsense going on, a lot of the, how should we put this, extremism that he's emboldened people to actively communicate was on full display this past Halloween. And Halloween should be a time, for tricks and treats and having a good time, good-spirited scares. But routinely it becomes a spectacle of bigotry, which definitely happened this year. Like an anti-LGBTQ Nazi, someone dressed up as a Nazi, striking on Halloween morning in Newberg, Oregon. Look at what this person does. They take their costume a little bit too far. Doesn't seem like that was a costume. He really meant that. Sometimes Halloween is a time for you to dress up as something that you wish you could be. And that's exactly what I think happened with this person, because what you can see in that video is he sets a pride flag on fire. And he did indeed do the Nazi hail sign in the home security camera, caught right there. So according to the Twitter user wanting to out this fascist that caught this on the camera, they posted, "This is the second time this particular house has had their pride flag messed with. The first time it was stolen, this time it was burned while attached to their house. By the time the resident got outside, the leaves below the flag were still burning, and this is clear escalation." So the flag was destroyed, and the residence itself, the house that the flag was attached to, did sustain some slight damage from the fire. Now local police are investigating this. The Newberg Dundee Police Department takes these cases very seriously, their words, not ours. And there is no place in our community for these types of actions. This case is currently being investigated as a bias crime by the Special Investigations Unit. Now, it's worth noting that Newberg does apparently have a Nazi problem, right? This is not the first time this flag was messed with. And in September, a small group of neo-Nazis gathered. And this guy has been seen carrying a flag with the Black Sun symbol, a hardcore neo-Nazi symbol used both by fascists and prolific mass shooters. You can see the flag in the photo there. Meanwhile, you also had educators condoning and awarding indoctrination via school costume contests like this. I don't know if you remember going to school, dressing up, doing your costume contests, but look at this. Tonight, one of my students won first place in his age group for the best costume. He's a free thinker with his own opinions and beliefs. Every child deserves the same opportunity. Yeah. They're getting them while they're young, right? That's why they're taking over all of these school board elections so that they have control over what happens in the classroom for early indoctrination. That's why we have so much far right spending in school board elections. But is this child a free thinker? Because clearly he found out about January 6th somewhere. Was he just on the internet one night and decided, I'm gonna watch some videos of January 6th, and he sees this guy and he's inspired and dresses up like him? My humble opinion is that this came from the parents or maybe his teachers who clearly support this kind of behavior. Now, some racist Halloween highlights for you. We're gonna just play the hits here. Here's 18-year-old high school senior Michael Harrison Barrett of Alabama. He was arrested and charged with first-degree assault and accused of stabbing another partygoer at a costume party. So why did he stab someone? Reporting from CBS 42 News, according to a witness from the party, Barrett was wearing a Ku Klux Klan costume. The victim approached Barrett at the field party where a few hundred people had gathered and told him the costume was offensive and that he should take it off. Non-controversial opinion. Police say Barrett and the victim got into a fight over the costume, and Barrett pulled a knife and stabbed the victim in the side. Now, the victim's in stable condition and the investigation is ongoing. Seems like another case of someone dressing up as someone that they maybe already are, not even someone they want to be. And last but not least, if dressing up as a racist isn't terrible enough for you, here's some cultural appropriation. Let's watch this.
What's your name?
Jess.
Jess what?
Abbas.
Abbas?
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you why you think it's appropriate for you to wear that outfit. It's just out of curiosity. Do you know that
I find it offensive. My kids find it offensive. We're Native Americans, and that's not how we dress.
Maybe I just want to record. I'm just asking you a question. I just want to know why you think it's appropriate.
Sorry.
And why do you?
I didn't do it to offend anybody.
But you know that we're still here, that we don't really actually dress like that.
You need to leave her alone.
But you think that that's appropriate for her to do that?
Why isn't it?
Because we're Native Americans.
Well, good for you. You know what? We have a right to express however we want. I'm part Native American too, so
what are you?
Leave her alone.
What type of
Cherokee?
Cherokee?
You need to leave her alone.
Most people are. It's a racist Halloween costume.
No. Racist? Seriously?
You don't really think so? Fine. She's proud of wearing that, so let's put her on. Let's just show everybody how it is, right?
You guys should be proud of it.
I'm proud of myself.
You shouldn't be new.
You guys are the only ones yelling.
You need to leave and leave these people alone. They have nothing to do with you.
And I just asked her a question.
And we asked you to leave.
We're not a costume. That's what I'm saying. I said, but we're not a costume.
Leave. So I guess my daughter is horrible because she's Headless Horseman and all these.
Oh no, but Headless Horseman isn't a real person, right?
And neither are you. So leave.
All right, so that's Jesse Abbas. As you can see, the name was right there on the screen. And if there's one thing people hate, it's accountability. And so what Jesse and her friends are doing is trying to get the indigenous woman who is on the other side of the camera telling her that her costume is very offensive, Eugenia. They're trying to get her fired from her job for recording this video and expressing her opinion on the matter following this encounter. So in a bunch of Facebook posts, they were even trying to figure out where Eugenia and her two daughters lived, simply for them expressing that they didn't appreciate her costume. Now, let's also remember the impact of systemic racism and genocide against indigenous people in the United States. She clearly stated that she was Cherokee. I mean, come on. Just the fact that it's 2022 and people are still wearing costumes like this on Halloween is a little bit crazy, but their response to try and get someone for recording this video and trying to spread awareness about something that's very clearly still a problem, trying to get them fired for doing so, just insane. Jackson, what do you make of all of these costumes? Who wins our costume contest?
Well, I think my biggest highlight was the Nazi who burned the flag. And just how, the more the right wing in this country, especially the major outlets, Fox News, Newsmax, or just any of the podcasts, whatever it is, especially most importantly, the politicians in office, the more they focus on the culture war, the more this nation's worst elements will continue to feel at home within the Republican Party. which will continue to make the party more of an extreme home for people of similar thought. And so, really, we're dealing with a party that's completely and totally out of control. And, I thought out of everything, that was definitely the most striking, because these people aren't kidding. You know what I mean? Like, they're not just people wearing costumes. They're people who are actually causing violence out here and who are encouraged to do so by people, again, who are within the halls of Congress. So, it's very important that we don't let these people outwork us.
Yeah. Taking the costume a little bit too seriously. I mean, I don't dress up like someone from, I don't know, Fast and the Furious and spend my night on Halloween out drifting. Like, I don't dress up like Batman and spend my night on Halloween fighting for vigilante justice and beating people up. Like, that's not what Halloween was about. That's not what the holiday's for. All right, we've got to take a break. We'll see you on the other side.
We're very honest that we're progressives. We call the Young Turks home of progressives, and we support progressive candidates.
There has been this reemergence of political activism, especially among young people.
This weekend was the second Women's March, both across the US and across the world. So these people are not simply marching, they're not simply talking, but they're also running for office. And when they do run, they're gonna make a difference.
Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful. Why? He raised a lot of money. But there's someone finally challenging him.
We need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
If candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even get a little bit of media attention outside of what the Young Turks does, they have an excellent chance of winning. She's gonna win. She's gonna win.
68% reporting.
The majority of Americans want Medicare for all. So I don't care what you and your corporate cronies want. What I care about is what the American people want.
We believe in total change. Everything runs on donor money. And that is what we will fight. And that is exactly why they don't like us.
We're having fun. It's election night.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Here we go again.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Crowley. Down goes Crowley. Down goes Manafort. Down goes Cohen. Women came out in record numbers in the primaries. They said you'll be lucky to get one candidate. We now have 12 that have won their primaries. Bezos and Amazon announcing that they are going to go to a 15-hour minimum wage.
We're making progress. Let's keep going.
Many of these women made history.
The biggest victories, all women of color. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland.
And I want to go to Congress because I want to change those things.
I'm calling it. Jamal Bowman has won. Down goes Engel. Down goes Engel.
For a long time, we have not had progressives in power. It's going to be something to behold.
Welcome to Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff, good news, good videos, good people, and of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
let's
flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word.
Okay.
This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this. Cheers to Brett Ehrlich. Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy. This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Yeah, still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually going to show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening? No, that's just wrong every way. And we'll see you next time.
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
Welcome back to Indisputable. It's Jessica Burbank and Jackson White here with you. And I have some sad news. So you may have heard, but the Supreme Court is hearing a case on affirmative action. And the way things have been going with the Supreme Court, it's not likely that this is going to go in a good direction, especially with, their track record on recent cases. But instead of allowing the most vulnerable people in our society to continually be hurt, we should outlaw practices like legacy admissions. So we're gonna do some organizing around this. So repost TYT Nation's video on legacy admissions using the hashtag #LoseTheLegacy and tag TYT Nation, and just tell the Supreme Court why you think legacy admissions should be banned. So instead of just being sad about it, there's something you can do. And we just told you, so get on that, send a tweet out, let them know how you feel. Let's flood their Twitter notifications. All right, back to viewer comments. Cheese Bro, ER Phil says, Cheese Bro sounds like the name of one of Brett Kavanaugh's frat buddies. This is turning into a cartoon. Biden.
Yeah, man, that name is just, I can't get past it.
Yeah, Cheese Bro. I don't know how that came to be. Like they were coming into Ellis Island. What was the name that got changed? I would love to know. All right, another great name, Biden's Flavor Corn Pop. Amazing. They say, yeah, every year we get Halloween goons like this wearing gross and deliberately offensive fits, setting fires, stealing property like the candy folks put out for kids we saw getting pilfered yesterday, keeping that 6,000-year-old tradition going. Over on YouTube, Will Sofer says he's not surprised. He just pooped himself because Trump told him he liked him while his photo was being shot. That's why he was smiling in that photo from Stephen Miller, I guess. I think that's what that's about. Eric Killmonger says, and neither are you. Yup, that's about as racist as it gets. Then we've got more from Trump's legal shenanigans before the midterms. Move in Death says Trump wants privacy for his information regarding the Letitia James case, but women can't have privacy for their bodies. LMAO. Fascist Killa says, meanwhile, Bill Maher and Jesse Peterson will call her, hey Karen, for complaining. Yeah, that's true. I got called Karen on Twitter recently for protesting at city council. Apparently, that's what the right wing thinks makes you a Karen. Makes a lot of sense, makes a lot of sense. So let's get into this. Let's talk about how the police and the media are BFFs. So the former head of CBS has been colluding with the police to cover up his sexual misconduct, including paying millions to cover this up. So it's Les Moonves. He must pay $30.5 million to resolve an investigation, finding that the network's senior leadership tried to cover up a confidential sexual assault complaint against him. Reporting from Law and Crime. An investigation determined that CBS and several members of the network's senior leadership were made aware of an initial allegation by a high-ranking member of the LAPD who previously worked for Moonves. That LAPD captain also released the confidential personal identifying information of the first woman who accused Moonves of sexual assault in November of 2017. The LAPD captain contacted CBS Senior Vice President of Talent about this. The talent relations manager, Ian Met Rose, when the department was first made aware of an alleged sexual misconduct or sexual assault by Moonves. So the LAPD and CBS were colluding to save this guy's back because we know that the media and the police departments work very closely together. This is a perfect example of that. So the captain made the following voicemail to Met Rose. Hey Ian, it's LAPD captain. I know we haven't talked in a while. I'm captain at LAPD Hollywood. Somebody walked in the station about a couple hours ago and made allegations against your boss regarding a sexual assault. It's confidential, as you know, but call me and I can give you some details and let you know what the allegation is before it goes to the media or gets out. So all right, talk to you after a while, bye. It's confidential, but just call me and I'll tell you everything, and I'm gonna put this on a recorded voicemail. These guys have no shame at all. So over the next few days and months, the LAPD captain continues to secretly provide Moonves and CBS executives with status updates on the LAPD's investigation. The report goes on to note the LAPD captain made it clear that he was willing to intervene on Moonves' behalf, and Moonves solicited the LAPD captain's assistance. Moonves put the LAPD captain in touch with his personal attorney, and the LAPD captain put the officers under his command in touch with Moonves via Midterms and Moonves' counsel. Eventually, Moonves, CBS executives, and the LAPD captain met in person to try and put a lid on the controversy. But in the end, additional allegations and the cultural shift of the Me Too movement led to Moonves' resignation in September of 2018. Quote, "We worked so hard to try to avoid this day," the LAPD captain texted Midterms. "I am completely sad." So come on, I mean, this shows that organizing works with the Me Too movement, right? If there's something that upsets you, it seems that in the United States, it is very true that what Frederick Douglass said about power will concede nothing without a demand, still true to this day, because it took the Me Too movement to get accountability here. The police knew about it and they were trying to cover it up. They were not even helping investigate this. Absolutely insane. So, the accuser was then targeted because, as you know, the member of the LAPD in Hollywood shared the personal information over the phone, presumably. We can tell that from the voicemail, reporting from Law and Crime again. At the same time, the report goes on. CBS executives circulated the first accuser's personal information and began sharing information about her family with each other in an effort to investigate and beat back the allegations. So looking for blackmail, presumably. In one text message to the CBS chief security officer, CBS senior executive vice president Anthony Ambrosio circulated a public record search containing the name, address, and telephone number of complainant number one's son, the report says. So they're going after her family. The address of the woman's son, the attorney general's report says, was used to find out the neighborhood where he lived. And would provide any clues that might let CBS investigators determine the allegation was based on the family's need for money, revealing that executives viewed the first claim as a potential shakedown. CBS insider trading allegations as well were a component in this story, again reporting from Law and Crime. While the various efforts to expose and silence the victim were being carried out by LAPD members and CBS executives, then Chief Communication Officer Gil Schwartz was authorized by the network to sell over 160,700 shares of CBS stock, the report notes, and that sale generated over $8 million in profit off of non-public information, including the LAPD complaint and other knowledge about Moonves' continued employment. Schwartz died in 2020. So let's talk about the payout. CBS, which now operates as Paramount Global, agreed to settle with Letitia James's office while neither admitting nor denying that those authorizations violated New York State's securities laws. The company agreed to the hefty fines in order to settle the matter and to avoid the time, expense, and distraction of litigation. In sum, CBS agreed to pay 28 million. Moonves agreed to pay 25 million. So what he did under CBS as the executive, CBS now is paying for, and he's paying a small fraction of that. So a statement from the LAPD. It recently came to the attention of the department that Attorney General James's investigation involved the actions of a former command officer with the Hollywood division. The department said it has opened an internal investigation and is cooperating with both the New York Attorney General and California Attorney General's office regarding the conduct of the retired command officer, as well as to identify any other members of the organization that may have been involved. Now, we know very well that they're trying to make it seem like, oh, well, it's all over now and this guy's retired and don't worry too much about it because we would never do something like that in this day and age. Mind you, the LAPD is currently being investigated for their involvement in gangs within the LAPD. And when they were being investigated, they went to the lead investigator's house and started searching it and seizing documents. So the LAPD, this is not some kind of practice that is behind them. This is how they operate and function. Jackson, what do you make of this crazy story?
Well, I think, it was just, pretty stunning just from those text messages, how buddy they were and how much concern was there. And it's always amazing to me, when, obviously we know that sexual assault and things like that are typically a crime of power that men use, especially in positions like that. But when these men find themselves in these legal situations and in these problematic situations for things that are so avoidable, it's like you just because you're sexually inept or inept in some type of way with women and you take it out in such a cheap manner. And you're defending him for what? So he doesn't look bad, so he doesn't lose his job. But this right here is exactly why the left wing in this country is growing, because it's really the only avenue to balancing out the power structures. Because otherwise, we're just talking about making a even more a society that's even more of a kleptocracy in such a way that these people are just going to routinely get away with these things and we won't be able to challenge them. So, I guess there's a good thing that justice is served in this case, but it's just really sad to see, these guys are getting away with stuff like that just because they're friends with the right people, so how many people have gotten away with stuff just for that reason?
Yeah, their friends, their common bond of patriarchy is really what brings them together. And it's so sad to see them say the quiet part out loud. We tried to avoid this, but now the Me Too movement, now I guess we have to treat women like human beings with rights. And to make it seem like she was doing this for money, it's just gross. But it's not the only time the police colludes with people outside of their wheelhouse and outside of their department. So let's go over to Louisville, Kentucky. Brooklawn foster care, their workers put a 7-year-old in a chokehold until he vomited and ended up dying. So we have a photo of the child. This is not a recent photo when he was 7 years old. It seems that it's when he's a toddler, but this is the child. It's Jessica Terry. And he would become a ward of the state in August of 2021 and received care at Euspiritus, which is a foster care parent organization comprised of Bellwood Home for Children and Brooklawn Child and Family Services, where Jason was assaulted. So on July of 2017 and 2022, 2 Brooklawn employees allegedly assaulted and physically restrained Jason. Reports show that a program manager started to vomit. Bellwood and Brooklawn are meant to care for children who have been neglected and abused, but allegedly they have their own history of child abuse. A recent investigation by NBC News also found that the therapeutic foster care facilities have been the subjects of 35 internal probes by the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services for the past 8 years. NBC News reports that about 32 children were under the facility's care as of August 20th. Still, Brooklawn and Bellwood have been at the center of abuse allegations well before Jason's tragic death. Among the 200 pages of records obtained by the state agency, an investigator wrote that they were concerned because of a pattern of behavior at Euspiritus of broken bones during restraints. So Jason's cause of death at Brooklawn was explained. That court documents show he suffered multiple injuries and suffocated in the position until he was unconscious. He remained unresponsive until he was transported to Norton's Children's Hospital in Louisville, where he was pronounced dead. The Jefferson County Coroner's Office ruled that Jason's death was a homicide by positional asphyxia, so he suffocated to death. Now, Jason's family are taking action, so we know that this was the type of court case where the child was taken by the state and was not surrendered. So Michelle and Misty Andrews, who's the couple who raised Jason Terry after his parents lost their parental rights, they filed a wrongful death and negligence complaint against Euspiritus. This was a 7-year-old child. So meanwhile, Euspiritus has fired 2 employees involved with the incident. Police and state law enforcement agencies are investigating what happened, and the Cabinet of Health and Family Services has suspended new placements at the Brooklawn facility where Jason was allegedly abused. Now, NBC News got a statement from the folks at Euspiritus, and here's what they had to say. We take very seriously any allegations made by a child in our care or by an employee of our organization. To protect our children and employees, we thoroughly review every allegation and take timely and appropriate actions to include termination of employees if necessary. We self-report allegations to Child Protective Services and guardians that have been brought to our attention. Self-reporting includes a child or staff member calling or electronically reporting to the Department for Community-Based Services, DCBS, and their relevant guardian, including DCBS, when appropriate. So it's known that children like JCN are placed under foster care when their parents are deemed to be negligent or abuse them. But today's foster care children have many other types of backgrounds. So here's an article of the horrifying misuse of foster care. It's from AEI, Riley and McKay. Our child protective system or child protection system is supposed to protect vulnerable children whose parents abuse them or are unwilling to care for them. A foster home is either a private home or a congregate care facility where abused, neglected, or abandoned children are placed by a government agency for temporary care. It then goes on to say, but in the current political environment, that system has just become another off-ramp to divert young criminals from punishment, perhaps even worse than plans to defund the police, eliminate cash bail, and promote reparative justice over incarceration, sending juvenile defendants into the foster care system puts them into close contact with our most vulnerable populations, and the system lacks any kind of rehabilitative services that juvenile delinquents are supposed to perceive to prevent escalating criminal behavior. So very interesting takes here coming from AEI. So the foster care system, if we just think about like what the government should be, we can acknowledge that there are some cases where parents are maybe unfit to be taking care of a child. And I always think about a community approach, right? It takes a village to raise a child. And sometimes our individualist culture of a nuclear family household doesn't suffice to properly raise a child. Many people, have their own stuff going on. They have their own trauma. And for whatever reason, they end up abusing their child. But to put them in foster care facilities with people who clearly don't care about children is very obviously not the answer. And we just have to do better because this is disgusting. Jackson, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's definitely key that there's more oversight because one of the important things people have to keep in mind about centers like this, whether it be foster care centers, nursing homes, or even red light districts, these types of environments can often attract low-life sadistic people because these centers are typically filled with society's most forgotten individuals, whether those be children who, sometimes kids can end up in the foster care system who come from decent backgrounds that just were dealing with poverty. But often these children come from very rough backgrounds and there's really no one to claim them, no one to look after them. Individuals in nursing homes, oftentimes they really don't have any family. There's nowhere for them to go. And then in red light districts, some of society's worst criminals that we've seen who target women, and who engage in prostitution in those areas. Again, people who aren't particularly looked after, who's gonna come looking for them? And it's because of this that these individuals, the most forgotten, why we need more oversight, especially when you're talking about children who never really had a shot at life to begin with. It's not like they became adults and they just made bad choices or had rough times. And it's, and for foster care, that's more of a system that has more government oversight, not doing the job that it should. But I thought this was a really sad story. But again, this is where the most sadistic people often prey.
Yeah, and it's really telling that AEI is reporting stuff like this is just a way to divert young criminals from punishment. It's like they acknowledge that we don't have systems in place in our society to properly take care of children. And that often leads to them committing crimes for safety, for economic necessity, right? It's my thinking that violence begins and ends with the state, right? The conditions of poverty that people grow up in that often lead to crime are created by the state. And so the response cannot be, well, foster care facilities are just, a way to divert punishment from crime. It seems like AEI and their typical approach to stuff like this is them saying, oh, well, we should just put them in jail anyway because foster care is just a way for them to avoid jail. It's just sick. I really wish we could approach these issues from a place of wanting what's best for the kids in our communities, but that is not the country we live in now, is it?
Unfortunately not, but again, that's what we're fighting for, so there's hope to be had.
There is hope to be had. All right, we've got to go to another break, and we'll see you on the other side.
The concept of the Young Turks means the audience. They are the Young Turks. They are the go-getters. They are the ones making the emphatic change happen in their local community. The reality is that we've always, young and the not so young, we've always cared about news. But when you do not see the messengers of the news look like you, when they do not share your experiences, exposures, and environment, and there's a disconnect between you and the news. I lecture in mass communications. One thing I tell all of my students, there is no such thing as non-biased news. It never has been. Non-biased news has always been an illusion. Let's go back to the 60s and 70s, where people would say that was the purity of non-biased news. News has a segment. That segment has a time. That time, you must do your story and be finished. That means the producer, the writer, the orator has to take out what they don't think is important and only leave in what they believe is important. They have a limited time to tell the story. They do not have time to tell everybody's version or everybody's side. And they get to choose the facts that they bring to you, as well as the nuance, which really is a word for opinion, that they bring to you, the context they bring to you. So we've always had a level of bias in news. Here's the issue. The issue is to not deceive individuals as if you don't have some level of opinion with your news commentary. And that's what TYT has never done. They've always been authentic in their approach to progressive ideology and their news analysis and political breakdown. And I think that's how you actually win the heart and soul of individuals who are consuming information from you, because now they see themselves in you.
Welcome back, everybody. We've talked a lot about the police not doing the right thing today, and now we have a story of hopefully some accountability for you. So a suburban Detroit man is suing a police department in Michigan in Detroit for $1 million for being arrested without probable cause and for the officers using excessive force. So this is David Hurley, who is 59 years old. He said Farmington Hills police officers crushed his back, smashed his face to the ground, and jammed a knee into his neck while he stood in his yard inspecting his property. He had not committed a crime. So here's a little bit of background on that arrest from the Atlanta Black Star. A woman called 911 in October of 2020 to report that her partner had stolen her cell phone and wallet after a physical assault. The caller described the suspect as a 21-year-old man driving a brown 2000 Oldsmobile. The dispatcher did not ask for a description of the man or the clothes he was wearing, according to the federal complaint filed on October 10th. This is Farmington Hills police officer Anthony Bateman. He responded to the call and said that he followed the Oldsmobile on foot. Hurley was in his Farmington Hills home when he saw another black man run through his yard. He went outside to figure out why the man was there, the lawsuit says. However, Bateman spotted Hurley and ordered him not to move, get on his knees and on the ground. The officer accosted Hurley with his gun drawn, court documents show. Hurley told Bateman his name and identified himself as the owner of the house, Dispatchers said the suspect's name was Stewart. Still, the lawsuit alleges that Bateman ignored the man and applied more restraints by stepping on Hurley's back. "I couldn't breathe and expressed that to the officers," Hurley said at a press conference on Tuesday. "I can't breathe, it's killing me." And before I knew I could see how maybe 10, 15, 20 more officers all just piling on me. Court documents show Hurley was placed in police custody for about 3 minutes when the 911 dispatcher called back the woman to ask for the suspect's description. The caller then said the man was wearing a black trench coat and gray sweatpants and red shoes. Hurley, who was at home with his family during the alleged assault, was wearing pajamas, he said. Bateman reportedly said that the man in custody was not wearing a trench coat, but did not let Hurley go. He was released only after another officer realized the mistake. So Farmington Hills Police Chief Jeff King told Fox 2 that the officers acted appropriately and they will vigorously defend the lawsuit in court. We reported about King's department earlier this summer when they were caught using only black targets in their firing range. So you can imagine what kind of guys these were. Now, all of them were piling on Hurley when the suspect had ran through his yard and got away. So 10, 15, 20 officers piling on this one black man who witnessed the person run through their yard. I mean, it's just disgusting. And thankfully he's suing for $1 million. I think, for what he went through, defunding the police is only going to happen by the police, it seems these days, by them continually doing stuff like this repeatedly. Jackson, what do you make of this?
Well, I think it goes to show, how often people just connect black bad, colored bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's really not much time for it to analyze anything. And also, you really can just clearly see often, not necessarily just from this case, but how often police officers don't want to back off because they just don't want to suffer the embarrassment of being wrong. So they'll just triple and quadruple down. So I think that's what this story shows the most.
Yeah, exactly right. Justice for David Hurley. We're with you, solidarity. Now, that's all we have time for, but I want to remind you that Jackson White and I are on Rebel HQ. You can watch our videos there. Make sure you check those out. Jackson's killing it over on Rebel HQ. For more of his content, go there. On the other side, we've got Unbossed with Senator Nina Turner, so stick and stay for that. Thanks for being with us today. And remember that the truth is indisputable. Dr. Ritchie will be back tomorrow. Bye, everybody.